A quiet night at the Ambassador Inn Motel in Kissimmee, Florida, was shattered by a scene of unimaginable violence. The stillness of the evening gave way to chaos as flames lit up the night sky and terrified screams echoed down the motel corridors. Within those walls, a 31-year-old man, Terell Rodgers, unleashed a storm of rage that would leave a young woman clinging to life and an entire community grappling with the horror of what had taken place. Guests and staff at the motel were jolted by the sight of thick smoke pouring out of one of the rooms, accompanied by the sounds of destruction. Police and firefighters rushed to the scene, finding chaos that was almost too overwhelming to process. What began as a domestic argument spiraled into a night of relentless violence, culminating in a blaze that threatened the lives of everyone in the building. Rodgers' actions were fueled by a toxic combination of anger and methamphetamine. Inside the room, the aftermath was devastating: bloodied walls, shattered furniture, and a bed engulfed in flames. His girlfriend, brutally beaten with a baseball bat, lay unconscious, her injuries so severe that medical professionals questioned her chances of survival. Rodgers' motive? He later claimed it gave him a disturbing sense of control, a statement that only deepened the shock for those following the case. Before we explore the chilling details of this crime, take a moment to subscribe to Vic's True Crime Stories. Here, we dive into the most gripping cases, unraveling the events and uncovering the truths behind the headlines. Your subscription helps us bring these stories to light and ensures you won't miss any future cases. It started like any other evening at the Ambassador Inn Motel in Kissimmee. The neon lights of the motel buzzed faintly, and most guests were settling in for the night. But what began as an unremarkable evening quickly spiraled into a nightmare. The silence was shattered by sudden, chilling screams, followed by the unmistakable sound of chaos: thuds, crashes, and cries for help. Moments later, the acrid stench of smoke filled the air, creeping through the corridors and forcing guests to flee their rooms. What had begun as a quiet night had turned into a scene of sheer terror. Inside room 213 were two people at the center of this unfolding horror. 31-year-old Terell Rodgers and his girlfriend, a 25-year-old woman whose name remains protected, had checked into the motel earlier that day. From the outside, they might have appeared like any other couple. But within those four walls, tensions escalated rapidly, creating a volatile atmosphere that would soon erupt into unspeakable violence. Rodgers, driven by a dangerous mix of methamphetamine and rage, turned his fury toward his girlfriend. Armed with a baseball bat, he unleashed a brutal and unrelenting attack. The sound of the blows reverberated through the thin motel walls, a horrifying soundtrack to the brutality taking place within. His girlfriend, completely defenseless, bore the brunt of his anger, sustaining life-threatening injuries, including multiple skull fractures. But Rodgers wasn't done. As his girlfriend lay motionless, he set the bed on fire, the flames quickly engulfing the room. Smoke billowed out, setting off alarms and sending the motel's guests into a frenzy as they scrambled to escape the growing blaze. The fire not only consumed the room but also posed a grave threat to everyone in the building. What began as a domestic dispute had escalated into an event that endangered dozens of lives, leaving everyone at the Ambassador Inn in shock and fear. Earlier that day, the seeds of the tragedy were already being sown. Inside room 213 of the Ambassador Inn, Terell Rodgers and his 25-year-old girlfriend secluded themselves, spending hours under the haze of methamphetamine. The drug, known for its ability to distort reality, amplify paranoia, and heighten aggression, was a dangerous companion to their already strained relationship. Tensions simmered beneath the surface as the effects of the drug took hold, clouding judgment and feeding Rodgers' unpredictable temper. The couple wasn't alone in the room that day. Two acquaintances, John Zeleniak and Christopher Suraj Budhai, were present during what would later become a critical turning point. At one point, Zeleniak casually asked Rodgers' girlfriend a simple question, something as harmless as asking if she wanted something to eat. But to Rodgers, the exchange was anything but harmless. He perceived the interaction as a slight, a deliberate act of ignoring him, and it ignited a spark of anger that began to boil over. The drug-fueled paranoia heightened Rodgers' emotions, transforming what should have been an inconsequential moment into a personal affront. Every look, every word, every action seemed magnified, distorted by the methamphetamine coursing through his system. The tension in the room grew thicker with every passing moment, as Rodgers' agitation became more apparent. His girlfriend's attempts to de-escalate the situation were futile, as Rodgers latched onto the idea that he was being disrespected. This small, seemingly insignificant interaction became the tipping point. It added fuel to a fire already burning from unresolved disputes, a volatile mix of emotions, and the effects of the drugs. What could have ended in a heated argument escalated into something far more dangerous, setting the stage for the violent outburst that would soon leave the motel in ruins and a young woman fighting for her life. The boiling tension in room 213 finally reached its breaking point. In a sudden, uncontrollable fit of rage, Terell Rodgers grabbed a baseball bat. The sound of the first strike reverberated through the motel as Rodgers smashed the television, shards of glass scattering across the floor. His fury was far from spent. When John Zeleniak tried to calm him down and intervene, Rodgers turned on him, his aggression now fully unleashed. Zeleniak barely escaped the blows, retreating as Rodgers turned his attention to his girlfriend. What followed was nothing short of horrifying. Rodgers directed his full wrath at her, striking her repeatedly with the bat. Each blow was merciless, leaving her with devastating injuries, including multiple skull fractures. The room, once a quiet haven, was now a scene of unimaginable violence, its walls echoing with the sounds of the brutal attack. Rodgers showed no hesitation, no restraint, as if consumed by an uncontrollable force. But even after the attack, his rampage was far from over. Rodgers, seemingly in a twisted bid to assert even greater control over the situation, set the bed on fire. Flames quickly engulfed the mattress, the smoke spreading rapidly through the motel. The fire wasn't just destruction, it was a direct threat to every guest and staff member in the building. As smoke alarms blared, panic gripped the motel. People fled their rooms, some grabbing their children, others barely managing to escape the growing inferno. Inside room 213, Zeleniak and Christopher Suraj Budhai, the two witnesses to Rodgers' violence, sought refuge in the bathroom. They locked themselves inside, terrified for their lives, as they listened to the relentless assault and the crackling fire that was spreading beyond control. Rodgers' rage didn't diminish. The sounds of destruction outside the bathroom door were unrelenting. Methamphetamine is known to strip away reason and amplify violent tendencies, and Rodgers was no exception. The drug's effects had blurred the line between reality and his perceived grievances. In his later confession, Rodgers admitted to feeling an unsettling sense of control and satisfaction during the attack. This chilling statement underscores the psychological break that drove him to commit such horrifying acts. If you find this story as shocking as we do, take a moment to share this video with friends who are interested in true crime stories. Together, we can raise awareness about the destructive impact of substance abuse and the dark reality of domestic violence. By spreading the word, we can shed light on these issues and spark conversations that could help prevent similar tragedies in the future. As the smoke cleared and emergency responders gained control of the chaotic scene, the magnitude of the tragedy at the Ambassador Inn became evident. Terell Rodgers, his rage subsided, was taken into custody by law enforcement without resistance. The weight of his actions was undeniable, and the charges against him reflected the severity of the crimes he had committed. He now faces multiple charges: attempted homicide for the brutal attack on his girlfriend, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon for his assault on John Zeleniak, first-degree arson for the fire that endangered countless lives, false imprisonment, and criminal mischief. Law enforcement officials described the scene they encountered as one of utter devastation. Evidence of Rodgers' destructive path was everywhere, from the charred remains of the motel room to the bloodied bat that had been used as a weapon. His girlfriend, critically injured, was rushed to the hospital, though medical professionals expressed little hope for her survival given the extent of her injuries. Currently, court records do not reveal whether Rodgers has entered any pleas or secured legal representation. His future will undoubtedly unfold in a courtroom, where his actions will be scrutinized, and the consequences of that violent night will be decided. The charges against him carry the potential for a lengthy prison sentence, ensuring that he will be held accountable for the lives he disrupted and the pain he caused. The Kissimmee community remains reeling from the events at the Ambassador Inn. This horrifying incident has sparked conversations about the dangers of drug addiction, the cycles of domestic violence, and the signs that often go unnoticed until it's too late. Neighbors, friends, and advocates are left questioning how such a tragedy could occur and how similar incidents can be prevented in the future. The motel, once a quiet and unassuming place, now stands as a grim reminder of the devastating impact of unchecked rage, substance abuse, and violence. The young woman at the center of this horrific tragedy remains hospitalized, her condition critical. The severity of the injuries inflicted upon her, multiple skull fractures and trauma from the relentless attack, has left medical professionals with little hope for her recovery. Her fight for survival serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the real, human cost of violence. For her family and loved ones, the events of that night are an unbearable weight, made all the more tragic by the senselessness of the act. This case forces us to confront the deeper issues that fueled such a horrific event. Substance abuse, particularly the use of methamphetamine, played a central role in driving this nightmarish escalation. The drug's ability to distort reality, heighten paranoia, and strip individuals of their empathy turned an already volatile situation into an irreparable disaster. This is not just a story about one man's violence. It is a cautionary tale about the widespread and devastating impact of addiction. Domestic violence is another undeniable thread in this case, a pattern of control, manipulation, and physical harm that far too often goes unnoticed or ignored until it's too late. The events at the Ambassador Inn highlight the critical need for education, awareness, and support for those trapped in abusive relationships. Resources for victims, as well as efforts to break the cycle of abuse, are vital to preventing tragedies like this one from occurring again. As the community grapples with the shock of what happened, the hope lies in turning this tragedy into a conversation about change. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, don't hesitate to seek help. Support is available through hotlines, shelters, and community resources. Together, we can shine a light on these pressing issues and work toward a future where such incidents are no longer part of our reality.